Hey, Bilal, thank you for coming in. You've done such a tremendous job in your role as chief of the study group's Department of ITU Standardization Bureau, or sometimes referred to as TSB. And you've done, tremendous work and uh, characterized by the digital transformation and collaboration with sectors, increasing much more with healthcare, transportation, utility, and banking. And you bring a really um, deep history of scientific understanding and research and so on. And senior executive leadership. So I really appreciate you coming in and spending time with us today.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for the opportunity to have a chat today.
So, Bilal, can you talk about some of the things that you've been able to do in the last years in your role of chief of the study groups department?
Sure, happy to. I'm very passionate actually about this, the work that I've been doing in the ITU for the past 12 years, because I see the impact in a UN specialized agency of information and communication technologies, such as the ITU. This impact is global. It impacts the lives of people through telecommunications and information and communication technologies. And this is quite a complementary role that I had before joining the ITU, where I was focused more on building products, innovating in technology, finding patents, and developing standards. So I had a perspective of standards from both a private sector and with a focus on P&L and a focus on building products and selling products and helping people communicate through innovation technology, to the different perspective from the ITU, where we try to bring those technologies and provide the developing countries with an equal footing, if you will, towards using and adopting those technologies. So my 12 years in the ITU have focused quite a bit on bridging the standardization gap. Because when I joined, there was maybe 25 countries that were active in standards development. Today, we have more than 45 countries quite actively involved, thanks to a very thorough program on bridging the standardization gap that trains engineers from developing countries on how they effectively participate in international negotiations at the ITU, to bring the requirements and also to move from being a simple consumer of technology to a contributor to the development of new technologies worldwide. And that's critical, especially after the pandemic. We saw how important and how critical it is for every country and every citizen to have access to digital technology and to have an accelerated digital transformation. In fact, one of the pillars of digital transformation that I've led in the ITU since 2014 is the financial inclusion. We embarked on a project with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2014 to create an environment of dialogue between the telecom regulator and the central banks, which is critical to having an enabling environment for mobile finance using telephones for mobile transactions, mobile phone transactions, money transactions. And then starting to develop the international standards that put the framework around security, trust, and infrastructure, and the quality of service in the networks to enable every citizen, regardless of their literacy, digital literacy or otherwise, to be part of the financial system. Especially that when we embarked on this project, according to the World Bank Findex report, there were 1.7 billion adults without a bank account. Out of those, 2/3 had a mobile phone. So 1.2 billion had a mobile phone. So our premise on this project was, how can we take those 1.2 billion adults and include them in the financial system so that they can have possibilities of microcredits. They can build a credit history. They can transact. They can receive remittances from overseas from their family. So this was a very important transformation of the financial sector that we then moved into Financial Inclusion Global Initiative, which included the implementation in 3 countries, in Mexico, in China, and in Egypt. And from there, we now have a digital financial services security lab that helps least developed countries do an audit on their security solution of mobile money, so that the trust by the citizen in the use of mobile money is quite high. Because once you lose the trust, people don't use these systems anymore for money transactions. So in your question about digital transformation, I'm very proud and very passionate about this ability to really have an impact on including more people, men and women, and we had a very strong focus on gender, ensuring that women are included because it increases their economic status and it allows them to have microcredits and participate equally in their economy, their local economy. So that's an area that is really something we led in the ITU. We participated very well with other partners, the World Bank, the Gates Foundation, and regulators and central banks around the world. Other areas of digital transformation include smart cities, smart sustainable cities. We developed a standard that does the key performance indicator of smart sustainable cities, and we implemented this in 200 cities around the world since 2015. And this standard itself was a tool to allow policymakers to collect the data and understand how smart and sustainable or not their city is. And based on that analysis, they can then build a master plan that is more quantitative, more data-driven, to enable their city to become smart and sustainable. We have seen countries adopt this model. Norway, for example, has gone nationwide with this standard. Another area of digital transformation is in transportation, having intelligent transportation systems. Today, road accidents are still the #1 cause of death in the world. However, the good news is that with the use of information communication technologies and the fact that most of the cars that are sold today are connected, they have at least 2 SIM cards. That connectivity allows significant improvement in detecting possible hazards on the road, ensuring there is communication between the car and the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, ensuring communication between cars, and adding autonomy in the driving, various degrees of autonomous driving. All of those systems together provide a much safer environment. In addition, we have launched an initiative with the UN Special Envoy on Road Safety, Mr. Jean Todt, on using artificial intelligence for road safety. We call it AI for road safety. And this is to encourage least developed countries to collect the data about the accidents. The car, the driver, the location of the accident, as well as the emergency response, how fast it arrived. And just those 4 data sets are quite tremendous in terms of being able to prevent future accidents and understand the road conditions, the car conditions, and the driver conditions that are leading to accidents and how quickly or not the emergency response comes. So, Stephen, these are some of the digital transformation areas that are enabled by international standards that we have developed in the ITU that have a real impact on the lives of people. And it's critical for developing countries to be part of the discussion and part of the development of the standard from a requirement, but also from ideas. Remember, financial inclusion and mobile payment is an idea that came out of Kenya, Africa. It was the M-Pesa project. And now that project and that idea is being used worldwide. So we cannot think of innovation only coming from developed countries. We have a proof that very significant innovation came from a developing country like Kenya and then was broadly used around the world. And that's why ITU is the right platform to bring the 193 member states, the 900 private sector entities and academia around a common table to develop, discuss, and publish international standards that have an impact on our daily lives. And digital transformation is key today in this improvement.
That's really, really compelling. You leading all of these initiatives as a collaborative platform and ensuring that you have equal participation and from those countries that are more developing than the developed as well, because these are important initiatives. You talked about this whole area of financial inclusion and bringing in the additional 1.2 billion into this area, and road safety as well, and smart cities, all of which are key hallmarks of digital transformation, and so much more, including in healthcare, such as and utility and so on, in these vertical sectors. Now, you talked about these standards. Maybe for the audience, some of them may not understand that the ITU predates the UN. It's about 160 years, isn't it, with the standardization portion of ITU?
Absolutely. The ITU was established in 1865 to basically create the standard for the telegraph system, because before the ITU, countries used to print the telegraph at the border, hand it on a piece of paper to the next border station, and then encode it again and send it on their own on the national telegraph network. And so the ITU was born to create a common data plane, a common signaling plane, and a common accounting agreement between the member states, the 40 or so member states that created the ITU. And it was initially the International Telegraph Union. But then since for the past 157 years, as technology changed and improved and new ideas came about, the telephone network and then the wireless communication and then voice over IP and fiber optics and now AI and use of machine learning. As the technologies improve and advance, the ITU has been the place to have those international agreements to provide the standard frameworks for companies to agree, and then the member states to provide their input as well as adopt and implement. It's so nice to have one place to go for a standard. And once, as a company, you have developed your standard, you basically have the adoption of 193 member states. It's a voluntary standard, but because it's developed with the participation of member states, if they had any issues, they would have said it during the process. And usually, if there is no issue, it's published and there it's being used. So for companies, and I used to work in a very big major company, Nortel Networks at the time, was the leading company in telecom. And the reason we came to ITU is that once we developed our fiber optic standards or video coding standards or quality of service, then we can sell the product in any country. We don't have to do any further justification or explanation to the member states, because they know the ITU, they trust the ITU, and the standards that are published sometimes are also in 6 languages. So even the language barrier is removed. And so for a company, ITU is a fantastic platform because of that public-private partnership that it offers.
I mean, I can see also, you mentioned that you were at Nortel, and in fact, prior to 2010, you worked in the private sector for 15 years and held senior executive positions such as director of standards for Nortel. And in that, you participated in over 90 standard-making bodies. In addition to that, you have a bachelor's, a master, and a PhD in computer engineering, and you hold, I think, something like 22 patents. And you were also part of the Internet Engineering Task Force, or IETF, where you authored a number of internet standards, and you're a member of the IEEE, or senior member. You're part of the IEEE Standards Association Board of Governors and the Corporate Advisory Group. Again, all around standards. So I can see this sort of convergence and confluence of your tremendous background and experience merged with the work that you're doing in a collaborative way with countries and with industry and so on. So you have this engineering aspect, you're a leader, but you're also a diplomat as well. So So it's quite remarkable. So I know that you're very innovative and you've been a catalyst in launching new standards initiatives. I know IoT is one. Can you name some of the others?
Definitely. Out of a platform that we have in the ITU called the AI for Good, which initially started as a summit, as a global summit on the use of artificial intelligence for good, with the idea that the Sustainable Development Goals, this is 17 Sustainable Development Goals, are just around the corner. When we started this initiative in 2017, with a goal of 2030 to reach all these SDGs, it is very short time. And so the AI, the use of data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning were coming about as a very strong, powerful tool. And we believed in the ITU that that tool is going to help us achieve the SDGs much quicker. And so we convened this summit in 2017 and saw that there was tremendous interest. Maybe we had about 400, 500 participants. So we ran another summit in 2018. And you were part of it, Stephen. You were a catalyst in launching the summit and helping us identify the right people. And you remember we had about 1,500 people in the second round. And the third one, 2,500 experts from around the world came to Geneva for this event, the AI for Good Global Summit. 2020, we had COVID, and then we moved online. And initially, we were kind of not sure how it's going to play out, but we were pleasantly surprised to have been able to reach almost 100,000 participants in this platform by 2021. And out of this platform came a number of opportunities for further standards development. The first one was the AI for Health focus group. This was 2018, if I remember correctly. It was spun out of the summit where we had the WHO Director General, the ITU Secretary General talk about the lack of doctors around the world and the fact that new applications are emerging on smartphones to help people diagnose diseases. And so it was clearly and obviously an area where both the WHO, the sister UN agency, and the ITU had the right expertise to convene the world experts on benchmarking those AI for Health applications. And we have a number of diseases, 10 or so diseases that could be benchmarked against the test data sets to basically help ensure that those applications that are being deployed are actually quite good and accurate and can help people around the world, especially in least developed countries, where they have no doctors and no nurses. And basically, if they have a smartphone, and they can use the application, they can get tremendous help very quickly. This was one initiative that was launched, or a focus group launched as a result of the platform. Another was the AI for autonomous and assisted driving, another focus group that we have developed similarly in principle, but a different field of application. The principle was increasing road safety through autonomy and benchmarking the AI driver. Now, we're not benchmarking the doctor, we're benchmarking the driver. And here we worked with the UNECE, which is the authority on regulating the automotive sector, and developing regulations that describe what's a good driver, what's a good behavior of a driver. And so we used those guidelines to see how we can benchmark the AI drivers. These are some of the examples of initiatives or focus groups that have been launched under my leadership of the study group department as the chief of department. Also, a number of initiatives around using IoT, where we had a number of dispersed activities, but then they were grouped into one study group. And also a strong focus on technical quality. It's not so much important to have so many standards that no one implements, but rather to have fewer high-quality implementable standards. So throughout my tenure, I had a dual focus, one on making the ITU the best platform for industry, ensuring that the patent and the IPR portfolio and rules are adequate for a good return on investment or reasonable return on investment for companies that develop patents and innovation. and a good platform where companies can quickly develop standards. And the other focus was on the developing countries to ensure that they have a good seat around the table where they can bring their innovation, but also understand the innovation that they're going to be deploying that is being developed in those big telecom providers or equipment manufacturers. So that my kind of experience of private sector and ITU guided me in trying to find that delicate balance. And I say delicate balance because it is truly delicate. In the ITU, in the role of TSB leader, Telecom Standards Bureau leader, there are so many variables to be balanced. Developed, developing, private sector, government, small and medium enterprises. You also have to cover the language sensitivity because we are an international organization. We work in 6 official languages. Thank God that I speak 4 out of those 6 official languages. And it's critical to communicate clearly in English, but also to communicate clearly in other languages, because sometimes we can see that in a meeting when there is deadlock, it is often things that are being lost in translation. So if you take the floor and you speak in the language of the delegate who is asking the question in French or in Arabic or in Spanish, and you can answer their question in their own language, the meeting moves much faster because there is nothing lost in translation. And in addition to the language, there is when you speak a language, you also understand the culture. And understanding what the person really means when they're saying something in their own language goes a long way that is not possible through interpretation. So for me, a significant asset in my success over the last 12 years, and hopefully in the future, is being multilingual. Because the multilateral political system that the UN is and the ITU is requires multilingualism and requires someone who understands the languages, is sensitive to the languages, and also understands the cultures behind the language. And I think that goes a long way in finding consensus. WTSA, the World Telecom Standards Assembly, this year was a good example of the importance of the technical understanding. You have to understand what technology is being standardized. You have to know the rules of the game and what's possible and what's not. And you have to understand delegates from 190 countries, 93 countries in their own language. And you have to have the diplomacy to say the right thing the right way. And putting all of those into one one machine, all of these variables in one machine is not an easy task. It's a very delicate balancing act, back to where we started.
And I'm just going to sort of summarize. I mean, you were a catalyst and are continue to be in launching of new standards initiatives. So you talked about this healthcare initiative with the WHO, actually, in partnership with them, and you talked about autonomous vehicles and the transportation area. You mentioned IoT. Of course, you've done work in blockchain, AI, and quantum computing. You've indicated that you really are attracting new kinds of membership from non-traditional players. So this speaks to something that's really coming to the forefront today. And this is called DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ESG, environmental social governance, which is coming to the fore globally. And so you speak to all of these elements. You also talked about the fact, and again, this speaks to diversity, equity, inclusion, that you're fluent in Arabic, French, and English, and you also speak Spanish and German as well. So in my reading, that's 5 languages, right? So, that's a considerable amount of understanding, and it's a nuanced environment, as you indicated. It's public and private sector, governments, and developing nations, and developed as well, and bringing all of these players together in a nuanced, respectful way and an inclusive way, and you've done all of that. Did I capture that, all of my understanding, what you were mentioning there?
Yes, that's very well captured. I would just add that this year is a very special year where we will have elections at the ITU in Bucharest, in Romania. at the end of September. And I have been honored to be the candidate of the Tunisian government. I have the trust of the chief of government, Minister of ICT and Foreign Affairs. But in addition to my own country, I have the trust and support of the whole region. The African Union has unanimously endorsed my candidacy as the only African candidate for the Bureau of Standards. The League of Arab States Ministers of ICTs have also endorsed my candidacy as the only Arab candidate to any elected position in the ITU, in the 5 elected officials position. And this is really very much rewarding to me for this 27-year career as an engineer, as a doctor of engineering, someone who's worked in the private sector, filed patents, developed products. Many of them are still in the market today. Many of the networks are using some of the designs and patents that I have developed in the airline network, for example. And of course, the 12 years in the ITU as a chief of department. It's a director level position in the UN system. And now I'm contending for an assistant secretary general of the UN level. Although in the ITU, we call it director of standards, but in the UN system, it's a level of assistant secretary general of the UN. This is a big honor for me. I am doing my best as someone from a developing country with limited means, diplomatic and financial, but hopefully through my capabilities as well as the support of my country and my region, Arab and African regions, I'll be able to compete with the other countries effectively and hopefully win this election in Bucharest, in Romania, because I believe the best candidate for the job should be elected, and hopefully I have the capabilities to be that person for the TSB director. So I'm humbly offering this 27-year career to the ITU membership, and I hope, and I'm quite confident that our membership will make the right decision in Bucharest, in Romania.
So again, just reflecting on what you're saying, I mean, you've lived in 3 continents of the world, right? So, and which includes in the African continent, plus in North America and in Europe as well, and you speak 5 languages, and really any standards program, any diverse, inclusive and equitable program has to have representation from different
Indeed.
parts of the world, and you seem to be the epitome of representation, right? Of
Yes.
the different groups around the world.
Exactly. And one more dimension to this representation and equity is that we in the ITU have 5 elected officials. We have a secretary general, a deputy secretary general, and 3 directors of the Bureau of Radio Communication, Bureau of Standards, and Bureau of Development. And it's important in those 5 elected officials' positions that there is a rotation among the regions in the position. For example, in the TSB director position that I am competing for, in the last 32 years, the director has been either from the Asia Pacific region or from the European region. So twice from Europe, twice from Asia in the last 32 years. The Arab, African, and developing countries have never led the TSB director position, the TSB bureau position in the history of ITU. So if and when elected, hopefully, I will be the first to lead the Standardization Bureau from the African and Arab region in the history of ITU. So it's important to rotate and to have representation in the position of the Director of Standards, but it's also important to have a balanced representation among the 5 elected officials. We cannot have all 5 elected officials from the same region or all from the developed countries, because then there is an imbalance. And I think through my election, I'll bring a very good balance from a significant part of the world, the developing countries, the Arab world, the African world. And also, it is not just a matter of representation. It is built on a very solid career in standards leadership. So that is my starting point, is that it's important to have the best candidate. But in addition, we need to have that regional balance, and we need to have the rotation among the regions. And I think my election will bring those two factors, rotation and balance, among the 5 elected officials, because the more diverse and inclusive the 5 elected officials are, the more capable they will be in providing consensus to the entire ITU membership, especially given the very strong geopolitical debates around technology and around security and ICTs in general. It's important to have a good balanced approach. And it's important to hear the views of all the regions. In addition, the Arab region and the African region have invested tremendously in the ITU in the last years. Almost all conferences and assemblies of the ITU have been hosted in the Arab region since 2012. The World Telecom Standards Assembly, the World Radio Conference, the Plenipotentiary Conference, and the World Development Conference have been hosted either in Africa or the Arab countries in the last 10 to 12 years. The Arab countries have invested quite a bit in supporting the new building project of the ITU here in Geneva that will start next year. And have also sponsored a number of the WSIS events and the SDG and AI for Good, Machine Learning Challenge. So our region views the ITU as the only platform to do standards and to work on international negotiation for technology and ICTs. So having representation on the 5 elected officials will go a long way in ensuring the success of the team of 5 elected officials that will be led by the Secretary General that will be elected in Bucharest.
It's a pretty compelling and narrative of your candidacy. You're a distinguished engineer, you're a leader, you're a diplomat, you're a multilingual standardization expert, you're a holder of 22 patents, you have a bachelor's, master's, and a doctorate in engineering. You've been working in standards across many different sort of sectors in the world today. You've led initiatives as chief of study groups at the ITU Standardization Bureau, bringing increased collaboration across different sectors. You mentioned healthcare and transportation, utility, and banking. You were the catalyst for the launch of new standards initiatives. Again, you mentioned it in healthcare and financial inclusion and AI and IoT and so on. And you were, credited with bringing together telcos and financial sectors together and developing this really innovative digital payment guidelines and standards, and advancing, as you mentioned, the 1.2 billion additional of the 1.7 billion into financial inclusion. You've been very effective as a key figure and leader in the ICT industry and working on standards, but also effectively managing your team, bringing in new talent, ensuring gender balance, establishing your work methods and staying within budget. And as we mentioned earlier, the 15 years in the private sector, director of standards, 90 standard making bodies prior to that, Internet Engineering Task Force, authoring many internet standards, including with IEEE, which is very strong in the standards area. And you're multilingual. I mean, you really have some fluency in 5 different languages. You lived in 3 different continents. You, for the first time, representing the Arabic and also the African regions. And I'm an investor, and I know that those are the dynamic regions now for the future of the world. And so, scientific and talent being catalyzed in those regions as well. So a lot of interest and support for these regions. Pretty compelling to me. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you summarized it very well, Stephen. Just one additional point that you mentioned already is the management of the staff in the ITU. It is a real pleasure to do it when you have 80 different nationalities. And the fact that I have lived, as you mentioned, in 3 continents, 4 countries, multilingual, it makes managing staff a lot easier. Because you need to listen to their needs, you need to listen to their challenges, you need to understand how to motivate them. And this is not, as you know, people management is an art. You read the Jack Welch book, and you read the highly effective habits of 7 highly effective habits and so on. But the practice in an international organization like the ITU is unparalleled. And as you know, human resources are our strength, and it's important to motivate and manage people effectively. And I will say that I've been very lucky to have an incredible talent in the TSB. I'm more friends than a boss to supervisee relationship. And my staff and my colleagues, not only in the Telecom Standards Bureau, but across the 700 staff in the ITU, when I led the WTSA 20 preparation and execution of the assembly, we had more than 120 staff from across the ITU that reported to me in various capacities. And we had a very positive management. We had a very cordial approach to things, even when things were tough and difficult and problems do occur. You have to have the right attitude and the right approach to keep people motivated and correct the course. And if you ask anyone who works in the ITU, who worked with me in the last 12 years, they will attest to an excellent relationship that we have, and the fact that we always can find a way forward to ensure we can serve our ITU members. We cannot forget that the Secretariat of the ITU and the leadership of ITU is here to serve the 193 member states, the 900 private sector and universities and research institutes, as well as regional organizations. So I believe this is an important human aspect that I'd wanted to just pick up on and emphasize a bit.
Well, Bilel, I mean, again, it really covers every gamut. You are definitely a strong leader, and you collaborate, and you very much practice inclusivity and equity and diversity, and you have this tremendous deep technical background as well. So that's but you cover all of those different aspects: the diplomat, the scientist, and more. This is our last question. Any additional sort of recommendations to the audience, or in your closing comments to the audience?
Well, my only request to policymakers and ministers of ICTs who are listening to us is to vote for me in Bucharest on either the 29th or 30th of September. And I'll ensure that the TSB will provide you with the best service, and also the 5 elected officials team. We will work in harmony to really help bring ICTs, connectivity, and digital transformation to the world, to make sure that we're ready for any future pandemic or any crisis that focuses only on the digital platform as the way to survive. So you can count on me to lead the TSB to the next height, and to continue to bring international standards. So please vote for me in Bucharest.
Well, thank you, Bilel, for coming in today and sharing all of your wisdom, insight, experience, and talent, and encouraging, empowering words to the audience globally. Thank you again.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.